Well, hello there! Welcome to another episode of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to find secrets and new discoveries in some of our favorite games. I got to say the thing! I said the thing! I feel so honored! My name is Arlo, and I've been waiting the better part of my career for an opportunity to work with Shesez on a Pikmin-related episode of Boundary Break, and the day has finally come. We are here! We're gonna look at some weird Pikmin stuff, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. Of course, we've got to start by thanking Bidzilla for creating the camera being used in this video, and of course all of you for joining us today. All that said, let's dive out of bounds and into the world of Pikmin 4.
We finally did it, buddy. Welcome to the show. Anyways, first thing I'm going to talk about here is hidden eyeballs. The first one goes to Russ, one of the first members that you rescue. And for some reason, Nintendo loves to have eyeballs underneath these sets of glasses. So thanks to someone who extracted the model for me, links to that person down below, we were able to delete the glasses and show you exactly what Russ's eyes look like without anything getting in the way. And the same can be said for Bernard. Bernard gets these awesome set of sunglasses that I wish I could put on my character for obvious reasons. But underneath his glasses, he too has eyeballs. And all the people that you can rescue is pretty interesting because they don't have faces until you rescue them, right? So taking the camera inside of their space helmet can show you that the model for the head is always in the shape of Olimar roughly and is completely black. Cool little extra feature is that if we take the camera inside of their heads, we can see that they have a rendered mouth as well.
Here we've got the character creator, and we can see that this is a skybox contained in a sky dome. Yo, dog, I heard you like sky, so we put a skybox in here. Sorry, old meme. It's pretty cool, though. It's always really funny to be reminded that, like, pretty much no matter what you're looking at in a game, like, no matter how simple it is, there's always some, like, very careful camera placement involved, and sometimes you just pull the camera back a little bit and the whole thing breaks. Very funny. And hey, look at that. The character's head isn't rendered in the reflection. Wonders never cease.
Now we're going to take a second to talk about today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the best online multiplayer game to involve military vehicles. Whether it be much loved existing vehicles that are here today, or even prototypes, you got a massive selection to choose from, each with its own features and feels different in its control. We are talking about ground forces, aviation, and naval vessels, all within different regions of the world, such as the USSR, USA, Germany, Great Britain, Japan, China, France, Italy, Sweden, and Israel. And if you've played War Thunder in the past, you might be surprised to find out that the game has significantly evolved since you last played. The visual effects have gotten a complete overhaul. Various parts will fly off tanks as it explodes, naval vessels can be torn to shreds in spectacular fashion, and you can see aircrafts littered with bullet holes in real time. There's also been a major update, La Royale, which has a whole French fleet led by the battleship Paris, the legendary BTR-80 and the Su-39, and many other novelties as well. War Thunder is out now for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Mac, and you can download War Thunder for free from the link in the description. Along with first-time players, you guys who haven't played for 6 months will receive 100,000 Silver Lions, a week of premium account, and so many other bonuses. Go ahead and scratch your itchy trigger finger and use the link below as soon as you can, as the season of German gifts will come to an end very soon. Thank you so much, War Thunder, for sponsoring this video, and back to the episode. And then I want to talk about Olimar's ship, only because the cockpit is a little bit hard to see in game, and so by taking the camera inside, we can see that his steering wheel is pink, and that it's firmly attached to the cockpit seat. Also want to talk about various characters' eyes, like Ochi here has orbs for eyes, which you should not be surprised by that because his eyes look like half orbs already on the outside of the model. But the eyes of most of the custom characters use cones, like this one right here. And now we're going to be talking about enemy models that go underneath the ground and what happens when they do. And the first example shows that this enemy just goes face first underneath the ground and then stops very shortly afterwards. This enemy goes underneath the ground and afterwards freezes in the place of the first frame of animation as it's going to rise above the ground. This is all really cool stuff because you would think that all the animations would play out roughly the same, but no. Moving on next to Emperor Bulblax. Its eyes are closed as if it's sleeping and its head is pointed downward. You of course don't get to see this because the first thing that happens when it goes above ground is its mouth opens and its eyes are widened. This enemy has its mouth agape, and the disturbed dirt that's usually above the surface drops underneath the ground and then shrinks until it becomes completely invisible. The burrowing snagret, a personal favorite of mine out of the Piclopedia of creatures. What's interesting about the burrowing snagret is that he'll start off facing one direction, and then the model flips over onto its side. Another cool, interesting thing about the burrowing snagret in Pikmin 4 at least, its model is fully rendered at all times. The model also stays in place from where it burrowed in until it warps to another location that's going to surprise the player from. Meanwhile, these guys will disappear entirely when they burrow underneath the ground. You wouldn't be able to find their model anywhere. Same can be said for the bug-eyed crawmad. As for the man-at-war, you can see that all of its legs kind of come to a point and then point downward. And inside the model, the gun is stored at all times, which is of course very impressive. A lot of times you'd find that accessories like that become invisible or culled out until it's ready to drop onto its rolling wheels.
Here we see what happens below ground when you jump into a cave. It seems your character and Ochi kind of just boink right out of there, and the Pikmin take their sweet time falling, but the drone is like, I'll meet you at the bottom, suckers! It's interesting that only one element here is animated all the way up to the loading screen.
Also, here's a fun one for you. Certain creatures will be hanging out very far on the map, and for an untraditional moment here, their level of detail is affected by where they are on the map and not the camera's position. So taking the camera over to this bowl board will show you that to save on resources, the eyes especially get hit with a lot less curvature to the eyeballs. Same could be said for pretty much any of the other grub dog family creatures that you'll see in any of these expeditions. Also want to take the camera up to a spectrolid because they're such small enemies, but they have features to them that might surprise you. One of which being its green eyes and also its tiny little legs and feet. And here's the plasma wraith dropping in real time. This was a bit of a tricky shot, so I do apologize for the quality, but you can see the exact moment that it spawns in, and you can also see that the plasma wraith just sort of hangs in its spot until it's ready to drop onto its rolling wheels. Also later in the game you can drain the water here, but where does that water go? Turns out that the water layer that you can see inside the sink is hanging out just below it and never gets despawned out of the game. Also, these tunnels in Pikmin 4, when you go through them, the game likes to fade to black and then show you on the other side of the tunnel. Well, I wanted to show you what happens to your captain and the Pikmin out of bounds. And as you can see here, it doesn't take very long at all before they get culled out and then warp to their position to be culled back in. And here's a really cool perspective for you. When you go off on a mission, there's this cutscene that plays out that shows you all the space cadets that are in the home base. But what's really fascinating is that during this cutscene, your avatar and everyone you were talking to before you started your mission loads back into place. All right, now here's a really good one. Some of the floors in this game in the underground caves depict you in an aquarium environment. There's all sorts of elements in the background. I will definitely tour it for you so that you can really get a sense for what it looks like from the other side of the fence. But one awesome boundary break element is that there's these stands over here that you would normally see in an aquarium, and taking the camera on the opposite side will show you that it features maps that would never be seen by the player.
Similarly, we now get to see what happens when you send Pikmin into a dirt mound. I fully expected that they would just shrink or freeze or disappear, but it seems they've got a unique animation. It kind of looks like they're swimming, oddly enough. I mean, I guess it kind of does look like they're digging, but Pikmin have dug in lots of the games and they've got their own animations for that, so I don't know what this is. But there you go, a unique sifting Pikmin animation that you never get to see normally. What about Ochi, though? Well, when he jumps into a dirt mound, it seems he prefers to smash down into a little blob with a tail and disappear. Not the digging method I would expect, but it seems to get the job done.
Now let's do a tour of a certain room that I think most people want me to take a look at, and that's the hero's hideaway. It's just an interior of a bottom floor of a house. It's amazing. And of course, you have to experience all of this through the perspective of a character the size of a quarter. But that's where a show like this comes in, and before we do that, I want to hit a viewer request that a lot of people asked about over on Twitter, and that was to take the camera all the way up to the door at the top of the stairs and see if there's anything over there. And of course the answer is no, but the fact that there's a door is something that is pretty cool. But what you're going to find a lot more details of is the environment outside the windows. Out here you have decks and porches with details that are very hard to see by the player. And so I want to take a moment to tour through that for a little bit before moving on and doing something that I've wanted to do since I played the demo of this game, which is just put the camera at a height that resembles an average human height and just start walking through this area, because it's really impressive how built to scale pretty much everything is on this map, while also maintaining a sense of functionality for the Pikmin franchise. Then the area where you fight the final boss, there's all sorts of objects that are just hanging outside of the arena. Stuff like shoes, a pillow, a burger box, toys, all sorts of junk. And before we move on, I wanted to show you most of the stuff that you would be able to find out here. Taking the camera out in another area, there's this outdoor play set that you can barely see because of all the level of detail blur. But taking the camera over here can show you that somebody took the time to really design a whole entire set. Now granted, there's some clever angling to prevent any unnecessary details that might bog down the game, but you can still see how this is essentially fully realized. Also, there's a building over here that seems to have cubbies of some sort, seeming to indicate that this whole area is a daycare center. And then in this first area that you get to discover, you can see this house all the way in the background. Well, if you take the camera all the way over there, you can see that it has a bay window that is not fully modeled, and it also has completely undetailed geometry to represent the doors. From here we can check out the beach area, and this one's pretty interesting for a different reason. The zoom out is nice and fun, but the sky textures is a bit strange because there seems to be like dark clouds that move over the sky dome, which has white clouds. Almost like a Smoky Prague reference or something. Very different and a bit surprised. Now I want to talk about a few things that are not Boundary Break specific. It does require the player to be looking at things that they normally wouldn't be looking at, which is why I still want to be able to talk about it here. The first one I want to mention is the pocket watch, and if you were to turn it around after collecting it, it says every second is of infinite value, which is a nice piece of advice. On a more depressing note, here is a padlock that has something written in Sharpie on the back, and it says always and forever. It's a message that only gets more and more sad the more you stop to think, why would someone write this on the back of a padlock? Then moving on from there, it wasn't easy, but yes, even the title screen can be boundary broken. Now it's all a CG cutscene, but what you're looking at here is all the frames of that animation hanging inside of a black void, and we have the camera panned out to show that it exists in a 3D space. Now again, with the blur, it's not the best look that you could possibly get, but the final cutscene of the game has the planet shown and everything, and I just want to show you a couple of things that's really interesting. The first of which being that the Earth is fully modeled, but the atmosphere is not. So at a certain point, you can see the cutoff point for where the developers knew full well the player's never going to see beyond this part of the Earth. Also here we can see this final cutscene and show you that the Pikmin that are blurred and all the way in the background don't actually exist, and instead are just a series of textures to look like they're Pikmin. Also, if you look very closely in this shot right here, you can see that there's an unused red Pikmin in the cutscene that's just hanging outside the boundaries. And although it's very blurry, and again I apologize for that, you can also see that the Space Sky Dome is housed inside of an atmospheric sky dome.
And those, my friends, are some of the deep, dark secrets of Pikmin 4, hidden just out of sight, only visible to us now thanks to a nefarious blend of technical wizardry and ancient dark magic. I would love to know what your favorite discovery was down in the comments. Also, if anyone makes plushies, I think there just might be a market for a squished up blob Ochi plushie. I mean, I know I'd buy one at the very least. Once again, thank you all for watching, and thanks to Shesez for having me on the show. And back to you, Shesez.
Hey, if you're new here, feel free to hit subscribe. We're just going to be doing out of bounds content pretty much exclusively on this channel. And if you're old here, go sub to Arlo. I'm so glad that I can finally say that I've had him on the show. We've been talking about this for years. Amazing, amazing YouTuber. One of my favorites that I've ever met in person. So it would mean a lot to me if some people from my audience went over, gave him a subscribe, and bring a little bit of extra joy to his day, because he certainly brought a lot of extra joy to mine. Thanks for being on the show, sir. And hopefully I get to talk to you soon. To the rest of you, thank you so much for watching. Take care.